Summary of Zoot Suit by Luis Valdez. A man in a zoot suit cuts through the background of the front page of a newspaper that says Zoot Suit hordes invade Los Angeles with a switchblade. El Pachuco comes out of the hole he made and fixes his clothes and combs his hair. He then addresses the crowd and asks them in Spanish slang if they're looking at his clothes. He then speaks English and tells the crowd that they are about to see a play about the Pachuco way of life. He says that the archetypical Pachuco is first and foremost a performer who helped shape what it means to be Chicano. The 38th Street Gang then comes in and turns the party into a wild one. Henry Reyna, leader of the 38th Street Gang, meets his friends while dressed in a zoot suit. The gang is having fun when they see members of their enemy gang, the Downey Gang. A fight is about to start, but El Pachuco stops it. The party is still stopped by a noise, and Sergeant Smith and Lieutenant Edwards rush in and tell the dancers to raise their hands. Smith tells a white sailor at the party to leave in a cool voice. He and Edwards then arrest the 38th Street Gang and take them to jail. When the reporters arrive, they yell out the news: the 38th Street Gang has been caught on suspicion of killing Jose Williams at Sleepy Lagoon not long ago. El Pachuco is the narrator and a part of Henry's soul. He talks to Henry in jail. El Pachuco says that the city is cracking down on Pachucos. This makes Henry sad, because he says that the police have wrongly accused him of crimes many times when he hasn't done anything wrong. This time it's even worse because he has to report to the Navy the next day to fight in World War II. He tells Henry that the US doesn't care about him and doesn't understand why Henry wants to do this. He tells Henry not to worry about wars in other countries because he has one at home. A reporter walks in with Edwards and Smith and reads out loud from a newspaper that 22 members of the 38th Street Gang have been caught. Edwards and Smith walk up to Henry and tell him they think he is up to no good. They say they were told to find malcontents because the country is at war. When Henry tells Edwards that he has arrested him before on false charges, Edwards uses this as an excuse. He then says that he will let Henry out of jail and let him join the Navy if he gives an account of what happened to Jose Williams. El Pachuco is giving Henry advice that only he can hear, so Henry doesn't want to talk. Hank thinks about the night of the Sleep Lagoon murder when Edwards and Smith leave. He's back at this house getting ready to dance with Della, his new lover, his sister Lupe, and Rudy, his younger brother. Dorothea and Enrique, Henry's parents, don't like how Lupe's short skirt and Rudy's zoot suit look as they get ready to leave. He tells Henry not to let Rudy drink beer as they leave. People from the press ask Edwards about the murder trial and the Mexican crime wave in the present. In answer, Edwards says that the Sleepy Lagoon is a reservoir where young Chicanos like to swim, but he doesn't say much else about the crime scene. When Alice, a reporter, hears this, she asks if this is because Chicanos aren't allowed at the public pools. The other reporter doesn't like this question and cuts Alice off. Henry talks with his friends Joey, Smiley, and Tommy about how the news has written about them while he is in jail. Then, a white lawyer named George walks in and says his name. He says that Henry's parents hired him to defend the gang in court. Even though the guys were skeptical at first, George makes it clear that he doesn't expect to get paid for representing them. He also stresses how badly the 38th Street Gang members need a lawyer because unfair news coverage has already turned people against them. George tells them that in response, a committee has been set up to back the gang and show that people want to give them the justice they deserve. George's offer is accepted by Henry and his friends, but they don't want to. The story goes back to the night of the murder. Rudy gets drunk at a party with Henry and the rest of the 38th Street Gang. It gets worse when Rudy gets into a fight with members of the Downey Gang, led by a man named Rafaz. Henry steps in right before things get worse. He fights with a knife and beats Rafaz by attacking him with the blade and killing him. El Pachuco then cuts in with a snap of his fingers, and everyone stops moving. He tells Henry that there shouldn't be any more fighting in the play, especially between two Mexicans. El Pachuco tells Henry that this kind of violence is exactly what people paid to see when Henry says that he needs to kill Rafas to escape dying himself. This makes Henry decide to let Rafas go. The story goes back to the jail, where George sees Henry and presents him to Alice, a reporter who is trying to clear his name. She asks Henry about the night of the murder because she wants to write a fair story, but he doesn't want to talk. Alice points out that other newspapers are actively sharing false information about the gang in order to hurt their reputation. She also says that a newspaper owner who just wants to make money came up with the idea of Los Angeles' so-called Mexican crime wave. She says this is why people need to hear Henry's side of the story. She tells him that she grew up in Los Angeles and never heard of the Chicano population when Henry is still not sure. Now, though, she wants to know more about the neighborhood, which makes Henry more open to what she has to say. As the 38th Street gang is being tried, George tells the judge that Henry and his friends haven't been given clean clothes or new haircuts like they usually do before inmates go to court. The public prosecutor, on the other hand, says this is because bystanders can tell who the gang members are just by looking at them, and they won't be able to change how they look. He also says that every gang member must stand up when the lawyer calls their name out. He says that the witnesses need them to do this so they can tell them apart. George says that this might change how the jury decides because Henry and his friends could be accused of a crime if they stand up during the accusations. But once more, the judge doesn't agree with this argument. As the trial goes on, Della takes the stand and talks about what happened the night of Jose Williams's murder. She and Henry were having a romantic evening at the lagoon, and Henry even offered that they get married when he gets back from the Navy. As they looked out over the lake, they were interested in a party going on nearby. Then they saw the Downey gang breaking into Henry's car and damaging it. Henry tried to fight, but they beat him so badly that he passed out. When Henry woke up, he went to get the rest of the 38th Street gang. When he got back to the pond, he saw that the Downey gang was gone. But just as they were about to leave, they heard noise from the nearby party and went to see what was going on. It turned out that the Downey gang had just caused trouble at this party, so when the partygoers saw the 38th Street gang coming, they attacked them because they thought it was the Downey gang coming back to cause more trouble. Jose was killed in the fight that followed, but the 38th Street gang didn't know about it at the time. Following Della's story, the prosecutor and judge try to make Henry and his friends look like criminals and killers. In his last argument, the lawyer tells the jury that letting these young men go free would be bad for society in the United States. In his closing statement, George responds to this argument by saying that Henry and his friends are American citizens who are not guilty of murder and that convicting them without enough proof would go against the country's core values of justice. They are still given life sentences by the judges for being part of the 38th Street gang. In the next few weeks, Alice writes letters to Henry and his friends and works hard to get an article about their case published. This is because George has appealed the court's ruling. During this time, Henry starts to like Alice, and they start to date in a slightly romantic way. When Henry says he wants to drop out of the case, though, they don't agree. Alice tells him he can't do this and shows him how hard she's worked to help him. Henry tells her to remember that he never asked for help and tells her to stop being so selfless. As the fight goes on, Alice gets more and more angry until she finally breaks down. She laments that no matter how hard she tries, no one takes her seriously because they think she's too sentimental and can't be trusted because she's a Jewish communist. Hears this and says, she finally sounds like she really means what she's saying, and he decides to keep up his appeal. Not long after this conversation, Henry is put in solitary prison for fighting with a guard. Bad things happen in Los Angeles while he's alone. The Zoot Suit riots start, and Rudy and some other young Chicano men are targeted by white soldiers because they are wearing Zoot suits. The riots are terrible for the Chicano community, but there is good news afterward. Henry and the rest of the gang win their appeal and are freed. They have a big party at Dolores and Enrique's house when they get home, but this is not the happy, easy ending it might seem. Instead, Henry has to choose between Della and Alice as the person he loves more. he never sticks with one. Rudy tells Henry not to wear his Zoot suit at the same time. At the same time that Henry was in jail, Rudy joined the Navy. He will be going back to war the next day. A police officer comes outside and tries to arrest Joey while Della and Alice wait for Henry to decide between them. However, Enrique doesn't let Henry go outside to help because he doesn't want his son to be wrongly arrested again. George, Alice, and Tommy take care of the problem instead, and then everyone in the show takes turns telling the story of the rest of Henry's life. Someone from the press walks in and says that Henry goes back to jail in 1947 for robbery and assault and then kills another prisoner before dying in 1955. Rudy then says that Henry goes to Korea and dies in action in 1952, getting the Congressional Medal of Honor after his death. El Pachuco, on the other hand, says that this is just what the press says. For her part, Alice says that Henry gets married to Della and has 5 kids with her. In spite of the fact that Henry is known by a variety of names, including the born leader and the social victim, El Pachuco is able to summarize Henry's life by stating, Henry Reina. El Pachuco. The man. The myth still lives.
About the author. Luis Valdez was born in Delano, California. Valdez did well in school and even starred on a local TV show a lot when he was a high school student. After that, he went to San Jose State College and became more serious about theater. When he was a senior, he put on his first play, The Shrunken Head of Pancho. After high school, Valdez joined the San Francisco Mime Troupe for a while. He then started his own theater company called El Teatro Campesino. Valdez was the artistic head of the company, which was made up of farmers. The company's main shows were short political plays about how important farmers' unions are. El Teatro Campesino became very famous very quickly, but Valdez quit the company in 1967 and opened a Chicano cultural center in Del Rey, California. After that, he went to Fresno and set up the cultural center again while teaching at Fresno State College. Valdez also started a different theater group called Tenas, which he moved again when he moved just south of San Francisco in 1971. He wrote political plays that were both funny and sad at the same time. Some examples are The Dark Root of a Scream, 1967, Burnaby, 1970, and Zoot Suit, 1979. Since then, he has directed many movies and won many awards, including the famous La Bamba in 1987. Valdez was given the National Medal of Arts in 2015 and lives in San Juan Bautista, California.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.